Welcome back. So tonight we're doing some history on the point of view. So if you're watching with your kids, remind them 24th February is a key date. Indeed, 28th February is also a very key date because the 1948 Crossroads shootings was what many people consider the trigger for the independence movement, leading to the boycotts by Nkrumah. All of that led to the arrest of a number of people, including Kwame Nkrumah, who was part of the sixth group, which is now known as the Big Six. But today we're first talking about the man Nkrumah and the way he led, and that coup and what it meant for Ghana. Later on, we'll talk about a lawsuit. Democracy Hub and the CPP have come together to file an action to basically demand that Ghana's international airport has its name changed. So Kotoka International Airport is named after Lieutenant E.K. Kotoka, who is the man accused of leading the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah in that 24th February 66 coup. We'll discuss that too. Kweku Dankwankwa is a historian. He's been on this show a few times and he's back on. Kweku, thanks for being on the show. Good evening.
Thank you.
Wonderful. It is said that Nkrumah's overthrow at the time was popular because there were so many things leading to his unpopularity. Apparently, prior to 1963, things were going very well, but after 63, things turned bad. The economy went bad. He was traveling a lot. He wasn't very popular and stuff like this. Do you have historical evidence to suggest that the overthrow at the time was popular? Because I will be showing some photos of people jubilating. Nkrumah's statue infamously knocked to the ground, and some of it having school kids even stand around it. What does the literature say about the feeling in the country at the time? Was it just opposition that were happy he was overthrown?
Yeah.
So, for example, here's a photo that says Nkrumah is the real traitor. People seem to be jubilating. They look like students. Any thoughts on that period?
Yeah. Before I even delve into that, as we're talking today, let someone do coup d'etat today. You will get a lot of people going on the street who are not in support of this current administration. They will jubilate, and international media as well as Ghanaian media will have a lot of good photo opportunities showing people celebrating from many angles. Once we are doing multi-party politics, there is no way any opposition, because coup d'etat means opportunity for the opposition to emerge. So during that period, as you have clarified earlier, what happened was that Nkrumah did a lot of policies, okay, economically, in terms of bringing in a lot of factories between those periods. About getting to about the count about 68 factories that were put up by Nkrumah within the period. There was import substitution economy. We have a lot of educational improvement, access to education, health facilities, colleges, and so on. At least before it's over, we have 3 universities. Okay, you have the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, you have Legon, you have University of Cape Coast, and so on. So Nkrumah did very well. However, most people, their problem was by 64, economy started tanking because most of the factories started were being manned by a lot of CPP members instead of open access for all other Ghanaians who have the competence or the technical know-how to work within the factories and the companies. This was not done, so it became largely partisan. Also, there was a lot of ransacking going on. All opportunities go to CPP supporters at all spheres. And this is not also led to the equitable sharing of the national cake. So, indeed, there was a lot of ill feeling economically that was hurting because the economy started tanking. For the first time, we're talking about the inflation. What we call the human inflation was first came into our vocabulary, and it was used to see how the government was not performing. Beyond that, what really triggered most Ghanaian was the political policies of Nkrumah. The move towards the one-party state, starting with certain obnoxious policies like Alien Deportation Act, which saw members of the Muslim Association Party, Elijah Amadou, Babalami, and others being taken away, Balogun and others being taken away within that period. This was against what Nkrumah himself has been advocating for about the African unity and how he used this law, Alien Deportation Act, to deal with his opponent within the Muslim Association Party, as well as even certain church leaders like Roosevelt, Archbishop Roosevelt of Anglican Church of Accra, including Bankole Timothy, who used to be the editor of the Daily Graphic and so on, who were all deported from this country. So politically, this was something that really made Nkrumah unpopular. Then also the PDA, Preventive Detention Act, which saw imprisonment of most of Nkrumah's opponents, including Dr. J.B. Dankwa, Obeto Bilamte, and several others. Indeed, a lot of things went on. I can talk about the Pangwan Junction affair, which led to the massive incarceration of opposition elements that were implicated in the Awete affair, when he was accused of trying to overthrow the government and how it impacted on the UP tradition and so on. So some of these policies really hurt the members of the opposition. Within the CPP itself, there was also an anger which led to some people moving out. By the time Nkrumah was overthrown, someone like Bodema had already moved out of the government and was in exile. And so on. So, despite the performance of Nkrumah at the time, politically, there was a lot that left to be desired, particularly with the amendment of the Constitution, ushering into some form of one-party state, which many people saw as intention of Nkrumah to become an autocrat within the country. So therefore, when the overthrow came, people who had become victims of some of extrajudicial activity, who have become victims of the activities of a young pioneer, because people can rat or snitch on their parents, can snitch on others, and this led to a lot of people being incarcerated at rural level. And some party members even use the PDA as an act against their friends without necessarily the central government. So it was abused. So it was over abused, and some of these things.
So there's this iconic photo of Nkrumah receiving the news of his overthrow from Peking on his trip to Hanoi. Yeah. I interviewed Ali Mazrui many years ago, and by the way, viewers, this is 24th February 1966, so exactly 59 years ago today. Nkrumah was the president of Ghana. This was at the beginnings of the Vietnam War, or and he was traveling to go to Vietnam to try and broker peace, and he was overthrown while he was in China. Ali Mazrui said Nkrumah was a great African but not a great Ghanaian, because his stature was larger than life on the continent, and indeed in 2000 the BBC listeners voted him the African of the Millennium. But I thought it was quite interesting to see a man from a country like Ghana flying to Hanoi to try and discuss peace in a world that we know has become quite a big talking point, even in the US, because the Vietnam War is seen as a very unpopular war living in that country. In discussing his local problems, how did you see his international persona within that same period?
As Mazrui said, Nkrumah's persona is beyond the shores of Ghana. He's a global African phenomenon, and this is somebody because of his stance on Pan-Africanism and his also desire for the continental unity of Africans, as well as ensuring independence for all African states beyond the shores of African continent. So this is a man who was for the right of the ordinary people, and his political ideals show him as someone who came from below and moved his way through hard work to reach where he became. And as a result, he understood what freedom means for ordinary people, and he continued to do so at global level. Thus, if you look at his political ideals, when the West and the East ideas came in the Cold War, he decided to be non-aligned. And he said, we face neither East nor West. We move forward. Forward means ensuring peace. Forward means showing diplomacy is used for the betterment of humankind. And that is why you see him moving to Hanoi to ensure that that war, which was affecting the people, within the Vietnam itself, as well as the American soldiers, something ought to be done. And he moved to ensure that there is a global peace. It is one of the good tributes of the leader at the time. But how that travel will later be seen as his last of his era is something that really beat his own imagination. That many people say he should have seen it coming. But for Nkrumah, he feels the kind of work he has done, the kind of development around that time, taking the African state first in the sub-Saharan Africa to independence, and trying to and have been successfully taken away from the shackles of not only colonialism but the continuous imperialism, or the nation continue attaching its equal strength to Britain by making us becoming a republic in 1960 was not mean feat. So with all those things he have done, and then the economic development he has also given to the people, he thought that no, nothing could be done to him, but he forgot about the political consequences of the actions he took. So if you look around that time, the elders used to tease that Nkrumah, when he was over to say, my Ghana, my Akosombo, my airport, my harbor.
So this is why people say his autobiography was titled Ghana, the autobiography of Kwame Nkrumah. So he sort of saw himself as the country. I wanted to read an excerpt from Dark Days in Ghana to put it in context for you, and then you can take a comment. So he says, I left Accra on 21st February 1966. I was seen off at the airport by most of the leading government and party officials and by service chiefs. I recall the handshakes and expressions of good wishes from Hali, Deku, Yakubu, and others. These men, smiling and ingratiating, had all the time treason and treachery in their minds. They had even planned my assassination on that day, though they later abandoned the idea. I remember shaking hands with Major General Bawa to be murdered in cold blood 3 days later when he refused to surrender to the rebel army soldiers. I little thought then that I would never see him again, or that Zanerigu, commander of the Presidential Guard Regiment, Kojo Bochio, Kofi Bakun, and other ministers who were there at the airport would be shortly seized by renegade soldiers and policemen and thrown into prison. After a week of so-called maneuvers, which is in quotes, the operation began early in the morning of Wednesday, 23rd February 1966, when the garrison at Kumasi, numbering 600 men, was ordered to move southwest to Accra. Then he begins to give in detail. I mean, Nkrumah is amazing. He says, on the way, the convoy of some 35 vehicles was met and halted by the two arch traitors, Colonel Kwesi Kotoka, commander of the 2nd Infantry Brigade, and Major Akwesi Amankwe Frifa of the 2nd Brigade. Kotoka had only recently been put in charge of the Kumasi garrison and had not yet confirmed his appointment. Kotoka, commander of the 2nd Infantry Brigade Group, and Major Akwesi Amankwe Frifa of the 2nd Brigade. Nkrumah, Kotoka had only recently been put in charge of the Kumasi garrison. Okay, yeah. Now it says Afrifa was left in command while Kotoka went to Accra to report progress to Commissioner of Police John Willie Kofi Hali and to find some soldier, better known than himself, to be the nominal head of the revolt. The man chosen was Major General Nkrumah, even though the conspirators had thought so little of his ability that they had not previously troubled to consult him. He was, however, one of the few officers who had held even the rank of a major in colonial days and had seen service in the World War, if only as a quartermaster. In the Congo, he had shown some bravery and at least routine ability, and had decorated him for his service, but essentially he was of a mediocre caliber. He goes on to describe in detail, mentioning names like Brigadier Hassan, head of military intelligence, Colonel Zanerigu, commander of the Presidential Guard, Otris Owusu Setre, former head of CID. I mean, these are names that have become known in our history, but the thought that in Guinea he could have such graphic memory to detail his views on every specific person involved or who was a victim. Quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, Nkrumah was a prolific writer. And you could see from his days in from 1945 West African Students Union, becoming a president of West African National Secretariat, and so on. He has been a writer all his life. So all what he needs is that to bring back those things he's capable of doing. He has been editing newspapers and so on. So it is not shocking at all that he could have that opportunity to write in such a fragrance manner. But the people he mentioned their name, if you look critically, and then also the aftermath of his overthrow, for instance, Halle, Deku, and others were the police, as well as the soldiers. The issue at that time to these people, if you read Peter Baker's work, the Operation Coup Chop, which is the code name for the coup. What actually was really worrying the soldiers at the time was the fact that Nkrumah has created an elite military force, which he called the Presidential Guard, okay, led by Colonel Zanerugu, and so on. And as a result, they were arguing that even ordinary dresses and expenses for the soldiers, they were not being taken care of. The police too were also livid about the seemingly role given by this new Presidential Guard, as well as the changes in the top brass. So all these things coagulate in this two group of people, the police and then the soldiers, who were aggrieved to come together to overthrow Nkrumah, that he has refused to respect them, unlike the way the British were taking care of them. So for them, that is where their interests merge. And then the political actors, the civilians, who also want Nkrumah out so that they can also emerge. Their issues of Nkrumah's autocratic nature also came in. So if you look at the overthrow of Nkrumah, I'm glad I'm working on something that has come into my hand about late Justice Austin Ni Abiore Evans Emisa. He has written his autobiography that was not published. He talks it's called Not Without Help. In that work, he, as Attorney General, former DPP, was at the core of the overthrow. When they overthrew, something very interesting happened. Initially, the leadership was to go to Kotoka and Afrifa. But when they look at the matrix, that people will see them as people who have always been guarded against Nkrumah, they decided to choose Nkrumah.
Which is what Nkrumah was referring to as...
Yes, so they brought Nkrumah in for optics, okay, to be their leader, and people would know, okay. But the Nkrumah was referring to as, he was also a respectable military general, went to the best of school like Sandest, and had the better days in how do you call it, in Congo. So he was not somebody who was just all that diluted as Nkrumah is trying to portray him. He had seen better days.
So he was an experienced soldier with some rank.
Yes, so they respected him. Even the British
he was not directly involved in the coup.
Yeah, he was not directly. He was just brought in, and even what he was supposed to read, the piece that he read, tabulating all the wrongs of Nkrumah, was written for him by Justice Austin Emisa.
Wow.
He wrote everything in his autobiography. Wow. He talked about how the military brass came together, the way Halle went to post, but Halle is least educated. Okay, Halle was least educated, but he was a very powerful man who could be described as the main architect of the coup, before bringing others like Otoka into it, and then they informed Afrifa, and then Major Okran. Those people later coming in to do the coup d'etat. So if you look at the coup d'etat, the architecture of the coup d'etat very well, people want to describe it as a police military coup d'etat against Nkrumah. But it couldn't have come without other causes like the Nkrumah's governance action, which really affected many people, and as a result, they gained sympathies from the Ghanaian public.
This is the point of view. Tonight we're doing a bit of history. My guest, Kukuda Kwankra, remembering the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah 59 years ago today.